Hello, everyone, and welcome to 321 Gang's webcast, How Jira Align Supports the PI Planning Event Itself, or Facilitating Essential Safe with Jira Align. Today we are hosting our three-part series of webinars that will demonstrate how Jira Align facilitates pre-PI planning, and PI execution. I'm going to paste the links for the registrations for our next two sessions in the chat box, and you'll be able to register directly from there. So as soon as I'm done with the intro, I'm going to take care of that. Please feel free to pass the link along to any colleagues that might be interested in registering. So my name's Kara Rawlings, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about 321 Gang before we get started. So 321 Gang has many years of experience successfully deploying enterprise-scale development, tooling, and processes in support of software and cyber physical systems builders. In 2014, we launched our SAFE training and transformation business and even contributed to the development of the framework itself. This combination of expertise makes our partnership with Atlassian a natural fit to help our clients accelerate the benefits of Agile at scale with a truly enterprise Agile planning tool like Jira Align. We focus specifically on software and systems engineering tools and processes. So today we are proud to introduce our presenter, Peter Leckie. He's our Senior Solutions Consultant, and Peter is a certified Scrum Master and a certified SAFE Program Consultant, and also an Atlassian certified professional. He received his master's degree in computer sciences from Purdue University. Peter began his professional career in IBM's Federal Systems Division as a programmer, and then became the manager of IBM's Rational Software Development environment. Concurrently, Peter worked as an adjunct associate professor at the State University of New York Binghamton, teaching software engineering and publishing a number of papers on the subject. At 321 Gang, Peter has been involved in selling and supporting Rational and Jira Align tools and the processes supported by these tools. These processes include topics such as Agile, MBSE, and SAFE. So please take note of your question box. If you have any comments or questions you'd like to be addressed at the end of the webinar, we'll be taking care of that at that time. So Peter, it's time.
Okay, let's go ahead and start the first session, Facilitating PI Planning with Jira Align. So this is the Scaled Agile Framework, SAFE, and it's the Essential SAFE Big Picture. So Essential SAFE contains the minimal set of roles, events, and artifacts required to continuously deliver software and system solutions via an Agile release train, an ART, as a team of Agile teams. The ART is the heart of Essential SAFE. ARTs are virtual organizations formed to span functional boundaries, eliminate unnecessary handoffs and steps, and accelerate value delivery by implementing safe, lean, agile principles. Program increments and PI planning together form the engine that drives the execution of the ART. So raise your hand. I don't know if you can do that here. Raise your hand if you have been part of a PI planning session. Is there a hand raising thing here on this one? But anyways,
there is.
I imagine quite a few of you have already participated in PI planning. So you will understand a lot of what we're talking about. So what happens if only the Scrum Masters, product owners, and release train engineer are there at the PI planning session? Well, I'll answer that question for you. Nothing happens. It's just another meeting. So PI planning involves all the Agile teams on the same ART. The Agile teams can be technical teams or business teams, and there's no way to implement SAFE without properly implementing the PI planning process. PI planning is an all hands on deck 2-day event with the goal to identify the objectives for the increment and all the impediments that could happen. It must be done this way because there's no way the business owner or anyone else for that matter could know all the impediments on their own. Creative solutions come with each of the various perspectives in the room. So alignment is achieved with everyone. Coming into PI planning, we take on the order of the top 10 features. Now, 10 isn't a strict number, but an appropriate estimation. 30 is too many, 2 is not enough. And then the second major input to the process is the vision. The vision answers the questions, why this feature? Why not this feature? It helps organizations choose agile team members who will have to make thousands of decisions and will need this context to answer the why questions. Via the planning process, we break features down into stories, add them to a program board to cross-check. The program board is simply a way to spot problems. After the planning process, we aggregate the output into PI objectives. Now, during preparation to the PI planning, using the vision, a roadmap of program epics is constructed. So we're seeing a roadmap view in Jira Align. So with Jira Align, the vision is an artifact with a title, description, and several priorities. The vision is usually maintained as a document outside of Jira Align. The roadmap is a very useful tool to prepare for PI planning. From the vision, several program epics are created. The roadmap shows where program epics fit on a timeline. And then we select the epics that span the upcoming program increment and identify the features from them. They're the children of the epic. And these are the ones that need to be implemented during that PI. Now, these child features appear on the roadmap as children of the corresponding epic. So you sort of see that in the roadmap in the picture. Now, the primary input into program planning is the feature backlog. Now, the backlog tool in Jira Align allows you to assign features to the PI and prioritize or rank them using WSJF or some other method. From the backlog, you can drag features from the unassigned backlog to the PI backlog and drag them to the right rank order. The teams working with their product owners choose the features that they are going to work on from this backlog. So here we are in the backlog, and with the click of a button, we have all that we need to calculate the WSJF for the features. We can then use that value to rank the features in the backlog. So all of that is supplied by Jira Align to make that much easier. All right, here we are in the day one agenda for PI planning. So the first 4 sections, the business context, product solution vision, and the architecture vision and development practices are based on PowerPoint slides. The roadmap and feature backlog in Jira Align may be used by the product manager to illustrate the planning context. Now, what we're going to talk about primarily here is how Jira Align is used during the team breakouts, the draft plan review, and the management review and problem solving in detail sections. Now let's take on the team breakouts. The purpose of the team breakouts is to create drafts of the iteration plans and team PI objectives, program risks and program level dependencies, and achieve alignment around the key priorities across the program. Originally, the teams would record all this information using flip charts, stickies, red yarn, and markers. There are all sorts of stories about losing this information because it was not captured in a tool until after the planning session. So we are going to show you how you can use Jira Align to record all this information in real time. So let's go through these 7 steps. Step 1, set up the team area. Enter the capacity for each iteration. So in the old days, each team would set up a wall of flip chart sheets. One sheet for each of the iterations or sprints, one sheet for the PI objectives, and one for the risks. The iteration sheets are annotated with a value for capacity and load. If starter stories exist, there is a sheet with a sticky for each of the starter stories. This is the team backlog. So PI planning kept 3M in business because of the number of colored stickies or Post-its that were needed. In Jira Align, instead of having a flip chart sheet for each of the iterations, each team can set up a Kanban view of the story backlog. So in SAFE, this is the team backlog. So you would have a column for each of the iterations, each with a place to annotate the capacity and accumulate the load. There is also a view of the unassigned starter stories in the unassigned backlog that we can see on the page. The other view that we want to set up ahead of time is the program room. So in this view, we can see the features along with the child stories. We can also see the objectives, the risks, dependencies, impediments, progress, a roadmap, and a number of other things. And you see there are little widgets around the picture here where you can see so dependencies and objectives are over here and so forth. Down here you'll see the features, and you can expand on the features to see the stories that are underneath them. So from the program board, you can click on one of the teams to focus in these elements from the team perspective. So we can use the program room for a team. Now, step 2, we pick up a feature from the product manager. So in this step, in the past, working with the product manager and the product owners, each team is assigned or selects the features or aspects of the features the team will work on during this PI. Now, if we were to work with Jira Align to do this as well, we would be working with the product manager and the product owners, and each team is assigned or selects the features or aspects of the features the team will work on during this PI from the program backlog. So we would go to the program backlog, work with them to figure out which one we want. And again, the backlog should be in rank order before this assignment is made so that you can more readily choose. Now, it is possible for more than one team to be associated with a single feature. So the association is done via the feature's child stories, not by the feature itself. So the team isn't directly assigned to the feature, but it is assigned to stories. So what we are seeing here is one of the Baltimore team members selected the G12 Team Innovation for ACS feature because it was assigned to the Baltimore team. Once the panel shown here is opened, which happens when you click on that feature, we scroll down to the full details part. And here we can see stories. And you can see that 2 members of the Baltimore team have been assigned stories that are children of the feature. So here we have the 2 different members here. And you can see that, as well, we can see that these stories are assigned to the Baltimore team. So you see right here, these stories are assigned to the Baltimore team and the 2 different members of the team. Now, because a feature's child story is assigned to a team, the parent feature is associated with that team. And we'll see that why that matters in a minute here. So here we see the program board in Jira Align at the beginning of PI planning. And you'll notice each of the teams has a few features in their unassigned backlog. So that's this column right here is the unassigned backlog. So the Baltimore team has 3 different features in there. These features are associated with the team, but they are not associated with an iteration yet. So when they get associated with an iteration, they'll move out onto the board. Okay. So right now we have features associated with a team on the program board. Now, step 3 is to estimate the stories. Now really, I would think this would come a little bit later, but anyways, this is the way SAFE has it as step 3, is to estimate the stories using story points. During PI planning, the stories are placed in each of the iterations. They should be estimated in terms of effort. Story points are usually used, and often planning poker is used to estimate this effort. So in Jira Align, there's a tool for allowing all the members of the team, whether they are physically present or not, to participate in a planning poker session. And the nice part about it is the tool records the outcomes with each of the stories. Now, step 4, we load the stories into the iterations. So during the team breakouts, the team will analyze the features they are working with, resulting in several stories being created and sized. A colored sticky is created for each of the stories, and it is placed with the starter stories on the team backlog sheet. And then from the backlog sheet, the stickies are transferred to the appropriate iteration sheet. Now, how do we do this in Jira Align? So in Jira Align, we start by selecting one of the assigned features. From within the features detail panel then, the child stories can either be added or created for the feature. So here we're seeing, over here, we have, this is the feature backlog. Okay, and see, we have the configuration here for the team Baltimore and for this particular PI. And so we're looking at the feature backlog. So then we have the configuration. Then we come down to C, and we now are looking at one of Baltimore's features, and it already has some child stories in here. So they're listed in here because we turned on this little the arrow thing here to get those. Now we're going to click on that feature. So we see that over here in the panel that pulls out to give us the detail. And then we scroll down to the full details on that. And in the full details, we see the set of stories that are associated with this particular feature. So these 4 have already been associated. 3 of them are part of the Baltimore team. And then we also have a way that we can add more stories in here to the list. So that's how we get the stories added in that are associated with a particular feature. Now, if we created stories in another way, which you can do, you can add the feature that it's associated with to it. But this is the easiest way because a lot of those fields get filled in for free. Okay. Whoops. Now, we can use the backlog Kanban iteration view to allocate the team backlog stories to the appropriate iteration. So the team backlog contains all the stories associated with the current PI and the team in question. So we can set this up to see all the stories in Baltimore's unassigned backlog. And here, the unassigned means that they have not been assigned to an iteration. Then we can drag and drop them onto the appropriate iteration in the Kanban. The load will be accumulated automatically and compared against the capacity to tell you how you're doing load versus capacity. Now, steps 5 and 6 Write the PI objectives using clear statements and identify the uncommitted objectives. During PI planning, the team objectives are collected on one of the flip chart sheets. Objectives are business summaries of what each team intends to deliver in the upcoming PI. So uncommitted objectives are used to identify work that can be variable within the scope of the PI. The work is planned, but the outcome is simply not certain. So during PI planning, are given an expected business value score, and at the end of the PI, the objectives are given an actual business value. Now, if we look in Jira Align, each team can enter and keep track of their own objectives for the PI. So that's what how much of the features are done so we can see how we're coming along on achieving the objective. So we can also connect to dependencies, we can connect to risk, we can connect to all sorts of stuff. So that's really one of the powerful things of Jira Align, especially in this objective, dealing with the objectives. Step 7, we're going to identify any program dependencies and risks. So let's start out with the dependencies. So to identify the program dependencies, in the old days, we use a program board which shows the features each team is working on and when the features are expected to be complete. So we take a feature and we put it in the appropriate iteration when it's supposed to complete. Okay. It also shows milestones and dependencies between the teams. Now, you all know what the dependencies are depicted with. It's this red yarn. So if there's a red yarn that connects two different features, it's showing that the one feature is dependent on the other feature. And hopefully those dependencies are all going the right direction. So just imagine trying to save and use this information electronically when you have it on a board like this. We have to translate it all. We have to make sure somehow we can record those dependencies. Somehow we can record the milestones, the features, all that kind of stuff. And with a tool, that just becomes so much easier. So setting the team plan in Jira Align, in the Jira Align program board is really easy. It's like the program board on the wall used during PI planning. The main difference is, of course, the Jira Align program board gets updated in real time. So there are some manual things to do that the POs and the Scrum Masters will need to do, but most of it is automated by how you enter the data. So each team has its own swim lane and owns stories for the PI and is associated with features. Features that teams will work on and dependencies for those teams are displayed in each row based on the target completion iteration for that team for the feature. So there are two different views. There's a normal view where the features and dependencies are displayed as cards, and then there's a small view, which is what you're actually seeing here. So it doesn't show some of the information, but it just represents that, so you can see a lot of the features and dependencies on the board. So the color of each item represents its current status, or if there is a scheduling issue. So of course, red means there's a scheduling issue of some sort that has to be looked into. And there's a legend that explains the significance of each of the colors and shapes. And so you'll see the legend up in the corner here. Okay. The configuration bar determines the program teams and the PIs that we see on the board, and what we really recommend for the board is that we do one program at a time and one PI at a time, so that things don't get confusing here, and it actually gets to be too much that you can see on a single screen. So here are the steps that we would go through in Jira Align to manage the dependencies. So there's a conversation, which you should have anyways. And then the requester creates a dependency in Jira Align, and then the respondent reviews and does one of the following: either proposes a new iteration, rejects the dependency, or commits to the dependency. So this is where we start out the process. So we'll create a dependency here in a grid that has the dependencies, and in this part we're actually, I sort of cut and pasted. So the part down here at the bottom are showing the ones that are being requested by Baltimore. The ones at the top are the ones that Baltimore is to do, so they're being requested by somebody else. But if we were to click on one of these, we would open up a panel just like we've done so many times in the past, only this is the panel that allows us to manage the dependencies. So say who we're dependent on, and then it sends it off to the other team, and they open a panel similar to this, and then do one of those three things that we talked: either accept it, reject it, or propose a new date. Okay, so that's all done online in here, and then that will be reflected on what we see on the board. So here we've clicked on this particular dependency, and it's showing that this dependency is dependent on this one feature, but this one feature is actually owned by two teams. So this the Baltimore is writing some stories for this feature, and the Cowboys are writing some stories for this feature. So the dependency is actually dependent on this one feature in both of these places. Now down in this corner, it gives us a little more information about dependencies, saying there are some issues here that we need to deal with, and that's why it's in red too. If we picked a green one, then there would be no issues at all. So that's what the green indication is. Okay. Now, so instead of, we need to talk about risks. So instead of just keeping the risks as stickies on a flip chart, which is what we do normally in PI planning, in Jira Align, we maintain the risks in a risk grid and the Rome report. So we're going to first talk about the risk grid. So to navigate to the risk grid, we select the program from the left-hand nav and then risk under manage. Okay, so that's how you get there. The risk grid shows a list of risks according to what has been selected in the top configuration bar. So the configuration bar isn't showing here, but so it'd be for a program, for a PI, maybe even for a team. And as the other grids, it is possible to filter the results using the in-page filtering mechanism, and new risks can be created from here. So when we add a risk, then that panel is going to slide out. And so here we see some of the fields that are available when creating a risk in Jira Align. within the red boxes indicating which fields are required. And it's important to know that the occurrence refers to the probability of the occurrence and not the frequency. Impact is straightforward. Critical path is a sequence of activities that controls the end date of the work, and so on and so forth. So there's lots of information that we can add to the risk, and we can set the roaming status as well. So whether it's resolved, owned, and now I'm drawing a blank, or mitigated. And the A is, anyways, I have that in a minute. I'm drawing a blank. But anyways, risk can also be related to things such as features or dependencies or those kinds of things. So we can add those links in as well. So now the next activity, the draft plan review. So here teams present with the Scrum Master performing a readout on their flip chart sheets, including the capacity, the load for each iteration, PI objectives, program risks and impediments, and a list of the iterations and the stories that are on there. So typically that's done on these flip charts again. But in Jira Align, the information from the flip sheets can be shown using the program room again. So we saw the program room with the team selected. And in this view, we can see the features along with the child stories. We can also see the objectives, the risks, the dependencies, the impediments, the progress, a roadmap for each of the teams. So instead of hauling all those charts up to the front or having everybody walk around to look at your charts on the wall, we can have the program room that everybody can see. So the next activity, management review and problem solving. So again, in the old days, at the end of day one, the leadership would gather to discuss these common questions. You know, what did we just learn? Where do we need to adjust? The vision, the scope, the team assignments. Where are the bottlenecks? What features must be de-scoped? What decisions must we make between now and tomorrow to address these issues? Okay, so in the old days, they might wander around the big room to review the team's plans and the program board on the wall. Not real easy. But now they can gather to discuss the same questions, but they also have access to a program room and a program board where they can see those kinds of things. We talked about the program room and all the stuff that's there. And then we also have the program board that has things laid out on the program board. So we can talk about that and use those two things as the primary input for the management review. So now we go on to day two. Now, if you look at it, the activities are very much like those on day one, in that the same processes and thus the same tools can be invoked. You know, the team breakouts, the final plan review, and then the PI confidence vote. We don't need any of the tools for that as well. Plan rework, we can do that by looking at the boards and so forth. Plan retrospectives, we sort of look at those and then annotate things that we want to change or do well. So we do want to talk about the program risk activity that happens in here, program risks. So that's the yellow one in here, the program risks. So during the risk roaming session, during that activity, each of the teams would bring out to the front of the room their red stickies with the program risks they have identified written on them. One at a time, the release train engineer will take one of these red stickies and determine, with the help of the folks in the room, whether the risk should be put in the resolved, owned, accepted, or mitigated box. Accepted, that's what A stands for. On the roaming board. Okay. So all we had was a sheet of paper with the stickies on them in the proper category. Now in Jira Align, the risk roam report can be used in the same way as the roam board. The benefit is that the roam report is built in. The risk roam report provides simple data around each of the 4 categories. So resolved, owned, accepted, and mitigated. It displays a percentage and account by category of the total risk. Risks in the roam report can only be displayed by program and a single PI. So we have our program and our PI, so that's perfect for the roaming session. There are also basic pie graphs that reflect risk counts for the open versus closed risk of occurrence and impact of occurrence. So we get a lot more information than just the single sheet. Then during the session, we can actually drag, if we don't have it in the right place and it's determined that this one that's owned should really be accepted or resolved, then we can just take it here and drag it to the other one. So it's a much better tool for dealing with that. I went too far. So in summary, using the scaled agile framework, especially PI planning, is integral to being successful scaling agile to a team of teams. So PI planning can be done in the old school way with flip charts, post-its, markers, and red yarn, but especially in this day of remote PI planning sessions, it is invaluable to have a tool to support the processes. Jira Align is that tool. So we have some time here for questions, and so while we're going to go through the questions, I'll just put this one up here that gives you some information on the upcoming things. So let me turn it back to Kara to see if there are any questions.
Okay, Peter, yeah, we have a few. So the first question is, in our organization, we use Jira and Azure DevOps to manage our issues. Will we have to enter the feature and story information in Jira Align and then again re-enter it in Jira and Azure DevOps?
Well, that's a beautiful thing with the way that Jira Align works with Jira or Azure DevOps, in that there is a synchronization aspect to the two tools. So that is set up such that you enter a feature in Jira Align and it gets synced up with a Jira Epic in Jira. You enter stories in, put the stories in the sprints in Jira, and they get synced up with stories in the iterations in Jira Align. So no, you don't have to enter it in both places. They get synced appropriately going back and forward.
Great, thank you. I've had a number of people ask if they are going to be able to access the slide deck. One thing I can tell you all is that we are recording this webinar and it will be available for playback and sharing on our website. So as far as the slides go, I think you should reach out to Peter and he can talk to you about that. So next.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we can make those available to you, and we'll just have to figure out the best way to do that.
Okay. Yep. Okay, great. Okay, so reporting such as CFD and flow velocity, that seems like maybe a comment to the other question. And then it says also predictability measures. So it's not so much a question. I don't think.
There are all sorts of, just like in Jira, and I'm sure Azure DevOps. I'm more familiar with Jira than Azure DevOps. But as in Jira, there are tons and tons of reports. Jira Align has all sorts of reports for dealing with all different aspects of what we're doing here. Now, one of the things of Jira Align that we really haven't gotten into here at all, because we're really talking about facilitating essential safe, is what happens at the upper levels. So what do we do with portfolios and so on? How do we manage those? So Jira Align handles those very well, and again, there'll be more reports that have to do with portfolio level stuff and so on. So yeah, the reporting is actually excellent in Jira Align.
Great. Okay. Does everyone on the Agile team typically have access to Jira Align?
So typically what happens is when you're working with Jira Align, you're also working with, again, either Jira or Azure DevOps. And so the people that are writing the stories, managing the stories, are going to be working, let's just talk about Jira for now, will be working in Jira. The people that are managing the things, the whole art and the features and so forth will be working in Jira Align. So all of the people working in Jira will have read access of what's going on in Jira Align. And then there will be a number of people like Scrum Masters and product owners and the RTE that will have full access where they can do all sorts of stuff in Jira Align, and then they can also do stuff in Jira. So sometimes they refer to them as having the swivel chair. They swivel back and forth between Jira and Jira Align. So everybody will be able to see what's in Jira Align, but typically you reserve the work in Jira Align for Scrum Masters, product owners, product manager, RTE, and so forth.
Great. Thanks, Peter. So I went ahead and I pasted your email so people can contact you directly in the chat box. So if you guys would like to if anybody wants to reach out regarding the slides, that's where you'll look. It's peter@321gang.com. Pretty simple. And it looks like that's going to conclude our question session for this webinar. And I just wanted to say thank you, Peter, for your presentation today.
And thank you to all of you who attended. I appreciate that.
That's right. And as I mentioned earlier, this session was recorded. It will be put up on our website at 321gang.com. You can view it as many times as you like and can share it with your colleagues. We hope to see you at the future sessions. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.